You're listening to the Martin Clinic Wellness Podcast. This is the show where we bring you the best tips, tricks, and nutritional hacks to help you and your family get healthier. You will also hear what works and doesn't work, so you don't have to waste your time and money. All right, let's get started. I think most people who read our newsletters, there are certain emails that we send out that always gets a lot of response. And, I always get excited.
We always shake the tree, right?
Yeah, and I always get excited when I'm reading research. And I mentioned this in the newsletters. There's certain things that will always get me to read a study. Coffee studies, I'll read them.
Yeah, my wife says that your mother says that we look for studies.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a confirmation bias, right? I mean, I'll look for studies, and then I'm like, see,
I told you, coffee's good for you.
But coffee is good for you.
Yeah,
I mean,
coffee is good for you.
There's some big studies out there.
How long have we been saying that?
Yeah,
we were saying it before people weren't saying it, right?
Well, no, and then
because they always say, "Oh, coffee's acidic.
Yeah,
it's no good for you." Blah blah blah. But hey. Folks, drink your Java.
So whenever we come across a coffee study, I always read it, and I usually write about it in our newsletters because, there's a lot of people, who drink coffee. Coffee's a big thing, and they always want to know, am I drinking coffee, right? Should I stop? So that's one. Like, we get a lot of feedback on coffee studies. And the other one that we get a lot of studies on, and we do talk about it quite a bit, because I always find this fascinating as well, is bacon, because we're big fans of bacon. Now, I know a lot of people listening, if I were to say the word bacon, they would think instantly artery clogging,
cancer producing.
Right? That's what they think. I mean, they've been conditioned to think that whole wheat toast and Special K for breakfast is low fat
and margarine,
healthy fat, right? And then, but the old fashioned bacon and eggs is like saturated, artery clogging fat, right? So I mean, I like to write on bacon because it rattles. It always does. I always get feedback, and some people are like, bacon's gross, and I'm like, I strongly disagree, right? There are, it's not in that I disagree with them. They're just flat out wrong. Yeah. I mean, bacon's bacon, right? But I mean, whatever. I like to write about it because, again, I like to remind people that bacon isn't the boogeyman that they'll make it out to be. Now, again, this goes full disclosure. We obviously would always recommend, getting to know your butcher's name anyways. We like, grass-fed, meats, organic when possible, obviously.
Yeah, and bacon, so there's natural bacon.
Oh yeah, there's butchers. I mean, it's so easy to get a hold of nowadays comparatively. But we're big fans of bacon, and the reason why, we wrote about bacon this past week, and again,
you know how many patients asked me about that newsletter?
Well, it is funny because first of all, I read a study and it caught my eye that they called it the bacon diet. This one study looked at what happens if a bacon-based diet, so 60% of their diet was bacon. And what they found actually is that it was actually shown to be cancer protective, right? So a 60% diet of bacon was cancer protective.
And who's eating that? Who's really doing that?
No,
much,
and
right?
What's interesting is that if you look at just bacon in itself, it really is a good food. It's got a good amount of fat in it. It's got a good amount of protein in it, and it's virtually carb free. Mm-hmm. Right, so it is really it's got good macros.
We've got a lot of bacon recipes in our Eat Fat Get Lean.
It's got a good 60%. Yeah. And the thing is that people are like, oh no, it's got bad fat, but this is where it gets funny, right? Because if we say olive oil, people are like heart healthy oil. Right? If you were to hook them up to a machine, or if you were to hold up flashcards like in a psych doctor's office and say the first thing that comes to your mind, and we hold up bacon, I would say
heart disease.
Yeah, good. But a lot of people may say,
90%
would say
heart more.
Yeah, bad fat.
Yeah.
If I were to we could actually be an interesting little fun thing to do is just go to a mall, hold up cue cards and say, is this good fat or bad fat? And hold up bacon. They'd say bad fat, right?
Yeah.
Hold up eggs. That'd be 50-50. It's got high cholesterol.
Yeah.
And then olive oil. Oh, that's heart healthy. Now, the interesting thing is if you look at olive oil, is considered healthy, right? And 70% of olive oil is made up of monounsaturated fats, right? So it's a good oil. We love olive oil. It's a tremendous cooking oil. Especially if you get a good one. There's a lot of bad olive oils out there, but if you get a good olive oil, it's 70% monounsaturated fatty acids. And the main form of it is in this oleic acid. So you have bacon, 70% monounsaturated fatty acids, and the main good one in there is what they call oleic acid. Now, do you know what other food is loaded with oleic acid as its type of fat? Bacon.
Yeah.
Right? It's a funny thing.
I knew the answer because you told me.
Yeah. But a lot of people would look at
I knew that.
A lot of people would look at bacon and they would look at olive oil and they would have two different reactions to one being good for you and the other one being bad, yet they both contain oleic acid.
I got to tell you a story because I had a patient in the office, I think about a few weeks ago. And I was telling him I want him to have, he was diabetic, right? So I said, I want you to have bacon and eggs every morning. And his wife's looking at me, and I mean it.
Like cross-eyed, want to shoot you.
Yeah. Like she was thinking, you know what? I'm going to be collecting my life insurance policy on this guy real quick because this dog's trying to kill him. Like I'm a quack, right? I could see her body language. And I turned to her and I said, well, how's he been doing? Oh, terrible. How's he feeling? Terrible. How's his blood sugars? Terrible. Everything is getting worse and worse and worse. And that's why she came. I said, well, trust me. You give that guy bacon and eggs every morning, no toast, bacon and eggs, and watch how his blood sugars start getting better. And anyway, he got up and gave me a big hug.
Oh yeah, because you're like a nutrition doctor is going to have me eat bacon.
He couldn't believe it.
No, because they think
they went to the.
Oh yeah, and those days are over to them, right?
Like he had just come out of the dietitian's office, I think, in the same week, right?
And you can imagine, right?
And they
whole
told,
grains.
And they told him, like, yeah, exactly.
Get on.
Like, yeah.
And the funny thing is that the advice that they typically
Special
get
K in the morning.
Yeah, they basically. I always kind of joke that a lot of the nutritionists or dietitians that give out the advice for heart patients or diabetics, they really should have a jacket on that for an amusement park in a sense, because what they're doing, they're like the gate attendants for the blood sugar roller coaster, right? You're gonna, now we're gonna get you on the blood sugar roller coaster ride. I remember filling in for your radio show one time. And somebody called in and asking, and they're saying their blood sugar levels are always elevated in the morning. And, okay. I mean, that could be normal for people, but what do you eat? Well, I have a couple pieces of whole wheat toast. I'm like, all right. I'm willing to bet dollars to donuts that if you ate bacon for breakfast and eggs, you wouldn't have those same kind of issues, right? And now it was a radio call-in show, and I didn't get the chance to follow up with them, but there's no question that one has an effect on blood sugar and insulin, and the other one not so much. But anyways, we just wanted to talk about that because whenever we write a newsletter on bacon, we get a lot of response. Some people have strong opinions against bacon, right? I mean, some people have strong opinions against meat. We're obviously
we're in the other camp.
Yeah, we are.
I don't apologize.
No,
for it.
That's right.
I tell people, look, you want to be a vegan, I'll work with you.
Yeah.
I have thousands a year come in. They're vegetarians or vegans, and I say, hey, I'll work with you. I got no problem. But I'm a scientist, and I tell you, like I don't buy it. Like I just don't buy it because I always tell people, look, you should be eating what God gave us, and that is what you can grow and what you can kill, because that's what you should be eating.
Yeah,
and
I'm
very,
I think,
very
so we
adamant
don't apologize for the fact that we recommend meat for sure. And, whenever a meat study comes out and it's, they're always bad in a sense. And the reason they're bad, first of all, we talked about this so many times in the past, but let's be honest. When they're doing a meat eating study, they're looking at people that are having burgers and fries, smoking and drinking. They're
Don't
not
exercise.
No, they're not they're not qualifying those aspect of things, right? So those studies, and plus dietary recall, people eat food for a couple months and then they get a form in the mail saying, hey, what did you eat 5 Saturdays ago? They're terrible, right? And people lie on those all the time, even though they just don't want to write down that they had Twinkies, right? They would all of a sudden their vegetable intake increases, when they fill out these forms. It's like, I think I had 3 peas that meal, so I had vegetables, right? So that's one of the things that happens. But one of the issues with those studies, first of all, like I said, is that they don't just look at somebody who's eating meat and not a bunch of bad carbs, just like butter, right? People blamed butter for bread's issues, because people put butter on their bread, and it was the bread that was giving them problems, not the butter. It's the same thing. They blame the meat for the carbohydrate issues, because a lot of times when they study these meat eaters, they're heavy carb eaters as well, right? So they're really not apples to apple comparisons. But so we're definitely, in the camp of that. But so whenever we talk about bacon, we always get.
So folks, eat your bacon. That's what we're trying to tell you.
If you like bacon, eat it.
Yep.
Don't, it's good. Now, on that note, let's, we did in our last podcast, I
get a lot of feedback on this.
Just the last one there, we talked a little bit about we call it the rodent chow, and that's what they call it when they try to fatten up a mouse, right? If they want to study the effect of
obesity
on a mouse, they got to fatten it up. So they feed it a specific type of food, right? And it's interesting. It's the same thing with pigs. If they want to fatten up a pig, right? Too, it doesn't matter. But anyways, so what they do is this is the standard kind of macro composition of rodent chow. It's a combination of 15% protein, 45% fat, and 40% carbohydrates. Now, what's interesting is that is kind of the macros that people are eating today. Yeah. People tend to eat,
only 15% protein.
Yeah. What's interesting is, there are research. There are people that do well on a low-fat diet. It's a small percentage of the population, but some people do okay on a low-fat diet for sure. They do. Yeah. They do all right, but nobody does well with a high-fat, high-carb diet. Yeah. It's the two worst things that you can mix together are
rodent chow.
Yeah, and that's what it is, right? It's high-fat, high-carbohydrate.
Yeah.
So that's why.
So you go to the show and you have a popcorn and a soda.
Yeah, especially. It's just like. That's like
on steroids.
That's
right?
A liver bomb right there. That's like liver fat. If I wanted to create something to put fat around your liver, would be that. It'd be a combination of high sugar, high fructose corn syrup, especially. Research shows that high fructose corn syrup seems to have a special effect on fat on the liver.
Folks, that's what's in your soda.
And combine that with carbohydrates and fat. So, we got a lot of feedback on, and they were asking more questions about that.
It's not the fat that makes you fat, folks. It's that combination.
Yeah, it's the fact that the rodent chow contains and the fat that they're eating is like vegetable oil fat too, right? It's not like they're giving them olive oil, or it's not like they're giving them avocados.
Yeah.
Right? It's
or
not
butter.
Yeah, no, they're not doing that. They're giving them like high vegetable oils. Yeah. A lot of these
corn oils.
Yeah, canolas and all these things.
Safflower.
Yeah,
and,
so that's what I mean. So even worse than that would be mixing this vegetable oil processed. Go Google how they make vegetable oil. There's nothing natural about vegetable oil at all.
There's nothing more synthetic than how they do it.
It's unbelievable how they make it, right? So, yeah, if you want to basically...
And it's amazing, too, because I was reading a study this week that showed just about when you have higher levels of omega-6 in the body, we're supposed to have a certain, like an even ratio, really, of omega-6 to omega-3, right? So... the problem is when you've got real high levels of omega-6, it actually drives down your levels of omega-3.
Yeah, and the problem is, as you mentioned, the average, North American has a diet of 17 to 22 to 1. So they're consuming 17 times more omega-6 than they are omega-3. And of course, omega-6 is from all the processed foods, which is why we have a high amount of autoimmune disorders, I mean, just think of the issues, right? So, anyways, people were asking questions about that, so we wanted to talk a little bit more about that. So, if you want a diet to gain weight, cut your protein down about 15%, low protein, and just eat a lot of processed, bad fats, which are like vegetable oils, and consume a lot of carbohydrates, and specifically in like high fructose corn syrup. And then you've got a recipe right there for, to make a fat chow, rodent chow. So people wanted to ask about that. Now, let's, we're, already, running into the tail end of this episode, and we wanted to kind of talk about another study that we found interesting that came out not too long ago, and it looked at replacing diet drinks with water at meals. And basically what they found is it led to more weight loss, and it led to less insulin resistance. And what specifically was interesting about this that caught our eye was that this was specifically on obese adults. And we've talked about this in the past. It's interesting. When a person becomes obese, their biochemistry changes, right? So you
their
have
whole,
their hormonal system changes.
Their hormonal system changes. They've shown that their bacteria changes in their body.
So,
their DNA of their microbiome changes, right?
Yeah, their gut bacteria
their gut
changes.
Bacteria changes.
We know. So, let's just, real quickly talk about a couple of because it is interesting, right? Like once a person gains weight and they become obese, their biochemistry is different, as you mentioned. So we know their biochemistry is different. So, for example, a lot of sweeteners that don't necessarily affect the blood sugar levels will affect their insulin levels, but it won't do that in a lean person, right? Somebody who's lean, the sweeteners don't have the same effect on them.
And you know what? It's amazing. What is somebody that's overweight? What's their favorite drink? A Diet Pop.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's
where
kind
do
of
you sell Diet Pepsi to? Like if you went to look at the consumer of diet soda, you would see people that are bigger.
Oh yeah.
They say, well, at least I'm not drinking any sugar, right?
And the funny thing is, again, and it's like one of those things, which is worse, right? I mean, every day of the week, sugared high fructose corn syrup drink is worse. And I know people say, oh, it's not, it's better. That's not true. Research has shown that fructose, especially when you drink it, is like literally a fat bomb for your liver.
Yeah.
It is terrible for you. And we're not saying go drink Diet Coke or Diet Pepsi or Diet whatever. We're just saying that, gun to your head, you had to drink one or the other. Definitely
more the diet.
The regular one is.
But you better drink water. And why?
Well, and that's the thing, right? This study looked at even, replacing Diet Coke with meals, or it wasn't Diet Coke specifically. It was, diet sodas with water in obese adults, lost more weight and also became less insulin resistant. So there is just a simple change like that makes a difference. Again, it goes to show you. Now, this is something that we hinted at in a previous podcast, that there is an abundance of foods and additives now that are 0 calories, additives, chemicals, that yet still have an impact on insulin, which is very scary. There are additives in foods that take a food that shouldn't have an insulin response and gives it an insulin response. That's terrifying.
Yeah.
And you can see it's creating this metabolic disorder. So, okay, let's briefly, we talked about, you mentioned in obesity, their gut bacteria changes. One thing we do know for sure is their brains are shrinking faster, right? Like smoking, obesity shrinks our brain faster. We've mentioned this many times. Yeah. But as we age, our brain is shrinking. And that's not a good thing, but it does shrink. So anything that we do that would make it shrink faster is even worse. Dementia and Alzheimer's, a lot of them have smaller brains, right? So it matters. So they find that obese people have faster brain shrinkage, right? So there are a lot of little things that go on in obesity that makes it truly, makes it truly dangerous, right? So anyways, we came across a couple of interesting studies in the last little bit that we wanted to share with you in this episode. So we hope you enjoyed listening. If you have any questions, you can email us at info@martinclinic.com. If you can go on our website, martinclinic.com. And if you're not a newsletter subscriber, go ahead, jump on. And, we share a lot of these things in our newsletters. And, if you're listening on iTunes, we would love if you left us an honest review. That would be fantastic. That would help us out. And again, we want to thank you for listening and have a great day. You've been listening to the Martin Clinic Wellness Podcast, brought to you by martinclinic.com. We are truly thankful that you took the time out of your busy day to listen. Talk soon.